All right. Good afternoon. Thanks to everyone for being here. My name is Amber Hefner. I am the Executive Director of Illinois Digital Educators Alliance, and I'm excited to be bringing you a special version today of our Coaches Hour with a panel of all stakeholders during this remote learning time. So we'll make introductions here with everyone, but a big shout out and thank you to Rova School District for sharing some time with us today. At this point, I always just like to remind everybody that we are recording this session. We are also going Facebook Live, so you can check it out there. And we will be utilizing the chat window. So if there are opportunities for you to ask questions, feel free to put that into the chat window. Also feel free to share a little bit about who you are and your district, your role, whatever you feel comfortable sharing in the chat window. We always like to know who's joining us. And then as we go, if there's any specific resources that we're sharing, we'll ask that those get put into the chat window as well. We'd like to share all of that information out, the recording, the chat archive, and any resources with everyone after today is over. So with that, I will turn it over quickly to Whitney Miller to let her introduce herself.
Hi guys, my name is Whitney Miller. I am the Director of Finance and Membership with IDEA, and I will kind of be managing things on the back end. I'll be monitoring the chat, so be sure to use that and let me know if you have any questions. Thanks.
Thanks, Whitney. And now I have the pleasure and the honor of making some introductions from our Rova School District panelists today. And we'll start with the most important person first. Look, I know Joe's looking up like, oh, but actually that's right. We're going to start with Taylor. So Taylor, thank you so much for joining. If you can just share your name and your role at Rova School District, and just share a little bit about what the last few weeks have been like for you.
So my name is Taylor Main. I'm a senior at Rova High School, and the past couple weeks I've been participating in calls like this for my classes on Zoom and Google Hangout, and then just accompanied by other assignments that I've done online and digitally and turned them in that way.
Sorry, Taylor, I'm trying to unmute myself here. So thank you so much. Well, it's great to have you, and we really, really appreciate it. So thank you so much for being here. Next up, Tracy.
Is this mic working?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm Tracy Johnson. I teach English. So I've got 4 classes that I'm teaching, freshmen through seniors, and then I'm also our instructional coach. So I've got 27 teachers on my caseload as well that I am helping through this process.
Great, thanks Tracy. We look forward to hearing from you throughout the day. All right, Adam.
I'm Adam Sini. I'm the principal at Rova Junior Senior High School. It's been my 2nd year in this position, and chaos has been the last couple of weeks. Just trying to communicate with all of our stakeholders and stay in touch with our kids and our teachers, and just like everybody else, kind of learning as we go through this thing. So thanks for having me.
Thank you, Adam, for joining us. We appreciate it. And last, but of course not least, Joe.
Hi, my name is Joe Sorminger. I'm the superintendent of the Rova School District in Oneida, Illinois. We're located about 15-20 minutes from Galesburg, Illinois. We're also located in between Peoria and the Quad Cities. This is my 6th year here at Rova. It's been an interesting time, but I'm glad I have the people on the screen here with me today to help me through all the challenges that we have as we go through this new setup for remote learning. So excited to be here. Thank you, Amber.
No, thank you, Joe. It really means a lot to have you guys take some time today and share with us. So what I would like to start with first off is just kind of an overview of the approach that ROVA has taken in the remote learning climate. What does that look like right now? What is kind of your, I guess let's start from a broad view. What does the week look like? How have you designed that? And then maybe we can dive into what a day in the life of each of you looks like. But if someone would like to share kind of just how, Joe, if you want to start, just how did you design the week? So what does Monday through Friday look like in ROVA?
So I think before we kind of get through that, I think one of the things we did with our remote learning plan is we went out and kind of did it backwards. We went out and reached out to all our stakeholders and tried to get an idea of what they were looking for when we started this process, what information they would like to have in their hands before they started. And so really, we actually pushed out more information on what we were trying to do, so parents knew ahead of time and students knew ahead of time what we were coming. And then we kind of backfilled that with taking a day or two to use those remote learning planning days to kind of organize our thoughts and then come out with our general plan on how we were going to attack it. And really, when we put our plan out, I thought the communication piece to it was a lot more important than the plan itself. So I think we were very proud of that. I know that other school districts got their plans out and quicker than ours, but you know, the days of the week now have seemed like it doesn't matter what day it is. It seems like we're always in the office or we're always talking, trying to get stuff done. So I think that was the biggest part for us, was just getting that communication piece out. And then from there, our teachers are our experts in the areas of their classroom, and we just leaned on them to give out the best opportunities for our kids.
Absolutely. So the communication part, I think, is key as well. And as we go throughout the session, I'd like to talk a little bit more about that as well. But with that being said, I would kind of like to hear from each of you then on, and I know there's no typical necessarily right now. It's kind of still putting out fires, I'm sure, and responding to all kinds of different things that come up. But what can you kind of just describe, and Joe, we'll start with you. What does a day in the life of a superintendent look like right now?
Well, I guess it depends. It depends whether or not I get to go to sleep early or late. But my mind has been on several things. But so basically what we've been doing is this: we've been coming in the morning, taking care of building issues, anything that our parents or students need from us from an admin level. Teachers also, we try to organize those first to try to take care of those fires. One of the things that we found out is that the longer that we let kids ask a question they don't have an answer to, the more the anxiety builds. So we've been trying to be cognizant of that. From there, Mr. Sini and I and Mrs. Johnson, at about 10:30, we go and help package about 80 to 90 lunches and breakfasts for our kiddos. We've been doing that every single day. After that, once that's done, admin comes back together. We've been working on return plans for students, whenever that may be, how we're going to do graduation, how we're going to do prom, how we're going to do awards. I mean, we've spent probably the last 2 weeks spending our afternoons for about an hour to 2 hours a day trying to figure out how that looks. Trying to put information out on where we're at with that, and just trying to make the best decisions possible for our kiddos and our community.
That's a lot. And the transition plan is something that I think is so important right now, you know, and there has to be a lot of reflecting that's going on as you're also thinking about moving forward and, you know, coming back into the building. So thank you for sharing that, Joe. Adam, how about you? What does a day look like for you as principal?
I think one thing I've kind of seen and learned over this time, and more so than maybe any other time, is the importance of flexibility as things are continually changing, and this situation has as fluid as it is. So, you know, outside of the things that that Mr. Sornberger mentioned, just you know, responding to emails and answering student requests and parent requests and teacher requests, you know, making sure that our kids have the things that they need, making sure that you know, that we're still staying in communication with our kids and making sure, one, first off, that everybody's okay, that everybody's mental health is fine. But like I said, it's just, I think flexibility has kind of been the name of the game more so than any other time in a time like this.
That is a great word for us to be thinking about right now, is definitely flexibility. And as we've done these sessions over the last few weeks, that's definitely been something that many people have mentioned in a very positive way. I think sometimes in education, we kind of get in our rut of doing the same thing. And this situation has very clearly caused us to really look at what we're doing, asking that question of why are we doing this, and could it be done in a different, better way? Tracy, how about you? What does a teacher instructional coach day look like?
Well, I'm going to start with a reminder that, I mean, all the teachers and instructional coaches know on here is that if you have kids, you're also doing that as well, your own children. So my day starts with trying to convince my 5-year-old that it's time to settle down and start doing work. And so my goal is always to get her started before I get started for the day, so she kind of knows what she's doing. So I start with that, and then I try most days to get ready so I look presentable for my students, which I don't know why, because as Taylor will tell you in a minute, they mostly talk from their beds. But then I've set it up so that I have my online classes, my synchronous instruction in the mornings. So I do 9 o'clock class with my kids, usually till about 9, or from 9 to 10:30 with my different classes. Then I head to Rova to deliver lunches. And then after that, spend a lot of time with the admin team working on some big picture stuff while also responding to emails all day, you know, teacher emails, kid emails. And then when I get home, I usually, my goal, again, is a little bit of balance. I try to spend the first half hour to hour when I get home trying to, again, talk to my daughter, see how her day went, you know, just spend some family time. But then, again, as we all know, this has kind of changed the structure of our day. And so since my kids, like Taylor, don't get up until noon or 1, they don't actually start sending question emails until usually about 1 or 2. So then I try to spend a couple hours around 4 to 5, like actually responding to all the students who are now starting their class day. And so that's been interesting, which I'm sure Taylor will talk about when she talks, but it's been interesting that, you know, they're not on the schedule that we are on. And so if I don't answer their emails in the evening, then they're not going to get them until the next day when they wake up at noon. So that's been a really fun challenge. So that's kind of how my day goes.
Yeah, that's actually a great point. And even though as a parent of a high school student who I'm having to like try to wake up at 10:30, 11 o'clock, you know, in the morning, I had to put myself in the shoes of a teacher who now is getting the work from my kid in the late afternoon. So that's definitely a good point, you know, on the schedule. I do want to just mention really quickly, I also started a watch party on Facebook Live, and you have a former student who's watching, so shout out to Libby. Hey Libby, thanks for joining us on Facebook Live. Your Rova family is saying hello. And so thanks for bringing that up, Tracy. I think that's an important piece that we need to be thinking about during this time as well. So Taylor, you really are somebody that we have been wanting to hear from and hear what is it like for a student. And I think it's important to note you are a senior, correct? So you bring that perspective, you know, as well, where our hearts are all going out to you during this time. So share with us a little bit about what the day of a life for a high school senior during remote learning looks like.
Well, I'd like to make a note. I'm one of the few people that gets up before 9 and then goes to bed at a regular time when everybody else usually goes to bed at 5 a.m. and gets up like at 2. So I do get up and go to sleep at a regular time, to make that note. But usually I get up, I'm up by 9 because usually I have 1 or 2 Zoom calls in the morning. And then the afternoon, I usually try to work out. We're still trying to do like remote learning, like track workouts just for the team, even though the state series has been canceled and everything like that. We still try to like do team stuff. And then usually I work on homework during the afternoon and that kind of stuff. So it's really flexible. The really like set in stone stuff are the calls that I have in the morning. And usually there's like 2 to 3 kids on those classes, sometimes, usually more, some depends on kind of the day. But that's just kind of how my days go.
While you're talking about your day, the conversation we had this morning about procrastination issues. Let me talk about that a little bit.
So I'm one of the people that, yeah, I'll get an assignment done, but it might not be done until like the last minute because I have so much free time. There's so much less structure not being in a school environment. There's so many different factors that go into like how you're learning at home, different things you're doing. Your parents are asking more of you. They're like, you need to do your laundry. You need to do stuff around the house. You're not at school, but you're doing the same course load, but you're doing it at home, being expected to do more. So there's a lot more like stimuli in your environment that are taking your attention, and it's making it harder to focus and do things. So I just like to keep that in mind. Just harder to focus at home when you feel like you're at home on extended summer vacation when you're still supposed to be in school.
Yeah, absolutely. You bring up some great points, you know, especially, and again, guys, you guys are all calling me out on putting my thoughts into other roles, right? Because I've done the same thing. I mean, my son is learning so many new things that literally don't necessarily have anything to do with the schoolwork that he's doing, but you know, laundry has become something he's learned to do, and cooking has you know, his skills have increased there as well. But those are some expectations that you have. So kind of with that being said, I'm going to get on my soapbox here for a little bit, because those kinds of activities, I personally feel are ways that we can incorporate what happens in school and a specific set of skills, and looking at those skills as ways that we educate our students. So it kind of goes back to what I was sharing earlier, you know, about the why. Why are we doing this assignment? And really diving in and looking at the skills that we want our students to have and how that can look. Earlier this week, we had a couple of instructional coaches sharing about a project that their students had done. For instance, actually, I think Vanessa's on here. One of her students was really interested in windmills. And so he did this windmill project and how all of that played out. So I'm just wondering if there's been those connections with students, or, you know, if the teachers are making those connections about how can we incorporate the skills that we want our students to have and different types of project-based learning activities or STEM activities or everyday responsibilities that students have on a daily basis during this time.
All right, I want to talk a little bit to that and maybe push back against you actually for a second with it too, because so Mr. Swarberger and I were actually having a conversation about his experience as a parent, and it got me to reflect on my experience as a student. We all I'm super creative now, and I like to be outside the box, and I love project-based learning. But when I was a student, I wanted the worksheet. I was the one who I wanted to be able to get it done and get the A. And so Mr. Sornberger and I talked that his son has been asking, you know, like we've been super proud of these projects that we're putting together and in the junior high. And we felt like, oh, we're doing this awesome thing. And he's been getting questions at home like, where's the worksheet? Why do I have to do this? I don't see the point in this. I don't see what I'm learning. Just give me the worksheet. Let me move on. And so I think that it is important to do projects still. My students are presenting a project tomorrow. So obviously I like it, but I think that some of the kids want to see the purpose for it. My friend, she's got a kid in school, and we were talking, and she said, I just wish there were more worksheets that I could sit down and they could do. And again, I'm not promoting worksheets at all, but I'm saying that we have to, as the planners of the instruction, we have to make sure that it's really clear what we want them to get out of it, because if we don't, they're thinking, why am I doing this? This is pointless. I want to be doing what I want to do. I don't want to be doing this long project. So you have to figure out a way, just like you do in the classroom, but to make it relevant and make them understand what they're learning that they need at this time. That's absolutely essential at this time in order for them to want to do it. Taylor, do you want to talk on that any?
Yeah, I really find myself like struggling with certain things because my teachers will give me assignments usually at the beginning of the week, and they're due the end of the week, and usually it's like, oh, this isn't too much work, but it's like sometimes I feel myself having busy work, and I don't like busy work. I like seeing a clear point to those assignments. I like knowing that I'm going to learn something and get out of it. I also don't want the assignment to take too long. So it's just kind of finding a balance. I do my homework, so I mean, if it's busy work, I'll still do it. But I know that there's a lot of students out there than me that are struggling with getting things done and struggling with finding a purpose and a motivation to finish, especially other seniors, seeing that we're not going back to school, we're not going to set foot in those halls again, and just trying to find the motivation to do those assignments because they almost see no point to them. Like, I'm not going to go back. I'm not going to take a final for this class. I'm not going to do this. So it's just, if there's a clear vision on like getting something out of it, then that's what you need to aim for. And then try to stay away from like the busy work or just trying to give them assignment to give them assignment just because they're home.
And Amber, we've talked about busy work when we were putting this plan together and talking about how we wanted to communicate it to kids. You know, busy work, if it's just a worksheet that doesn't make the kids do anything, they're sitting at home, they can Google any answer they want. So what are they truly learning? I think our goal has been to minimize the amount of busy work, obviously, that they get. We've been trying to look at how much work they get a week, and we've been gauging that through Google Forms. We've seen Google Forms out to our parents, our students, to try to get an idea of how much time they're spending on individual subjects. We've also given some of our teachers the flexibility to understand that if their subject is not something that we think that they need to teach, or it is something that the kid may not need the next year to get to the next level of the class, we've told them to kind of not slack off, but be a little lenient on what they give, because if it's something we can catch them up with next year, you know, that, to give an example of that, that'd be like our industrial arts programs, building and trades programs, and things like that. Our teacher is still active with those students. He just sends a message and says, hey, if you're working on something like automotively on your car, take a picture of it, send it to me, we'll problem solve and do it. But we're not going to give them assignments, go out and check tire pressure. You know, we're trying to be a little realistic with what we want to do with this, and we're trying to put together a plan because we don't know what next year looks like. This may be the model that we go back to as time progresses. So every day we're learning more and more, and I appreciate the work that our teachers and administrators have done to get this stuff off the ground. And Taylor, I'm going to brag on Taylor real quick. Taylor is basically the head of our communications program here at ROVA. She runs all our social media and things like that. A wonderful young lady who I think in a couple of weeks, if had an opportunity, would probably be in Charleston running the state track meet. So can't say enough about that girl.
Thanks for sharing that, Joe. I know it was loved having Taylor present at IDEACon this year as well. So one of the highlights of our conference is when we have amazing students get to come and present. So I concur. So kind of along the lines of, sorry, Tracy, did you say something?
Yeah. I want to touch on this a little more after Kevin's comment in the chat. So what I've been talking when I'm talking with teachers about planning instruction and what it should look like, because like what you said, some assignments appear to be busy work and they are not busy work, and vice versa. It has nothing to do with if it's a project or if it's not. It's about that essential goal. So I've been asking everybody, I mean, this is something we should have been doing lesson planning anyway, but it's very important now. That essential skill or goal needs to come first. So that needs to be the highlight. What is it that I want them to know? And then in my videos to the students, I'm just making sure, like, I'm focusing on citation, MLA citation in one of my classes, because next year they're going to be expected to write a research paper within their sophomore class, and she's going to expect that citations isn't an issue. And so activities have varied, and we've done all sorts of, like fun project-based and then more like just straightforward citation stuff, but it's all focused around that goal, and I make sure that they see that what the goal is, so that they're not thinking, why am I doing this assignment? What's the point of it? So assignments can look like anything as long as the goal is clear with it. I think that's what helps students be motivated.
I think you do a good job, Tracy, of bringing it back around, and you're exactly right. I think that's something that in education we don't do enough, is state that goal and purpose of what the skill is, or the reason, the why behind this assignment or activity or learning opportunity. So yeah, absolutely. And ever so more important right now, but one of those situations that we hope carries on once we transition back into whatever that new norm is. Which kind of brings me around to one of the things that you had kind of been talking about, is the kind of a back transition plan, but also communication. And so since you brought up the fact that Taylor is a big part of your communication, I would love to hear kind of what your communication plan has been. I can say as a parent, one of the things that I feel my son has been missing is that communication with his peers and with his teachers. There have been a few Zoom meetings that have been held, and those literally have been the highlights of his day when that gets to happen. So kind of what does that communication look like? Maybe like, from a superintendent, perspective, Joe, how are you communicating to your staff and families, and Adam, how does that break down as a principal? And then Tracy, and then what I'd really like to hear from Taylor is, as a student, what is she appreciating about that communication?
So I'll just start a little high level up, and then we'll just kind of move our way down. But one of the things we've tried to do is, one of the issues we've had with communication is that every time our governor has a press announcement that deals with schools, it's on a Friday. So we've been sending out a brief message after that just to say, hey, this is what he said, more news to come. One of the things that we've tried to do is get information out as quick as possible, but one of the things I'm always concerned about is giving out accurate information and not saying something now that I won't be able to do, in the future. So I put out I do videos. So I've sent 2 or 3 videos out to our community so they could just kind of hear my voice and what the sincerity I have for our students and the situation they're in. I also, when we talk about dates, like one of the big issues that we've had, and I know several other schools in the state around the United States have these issues, we have prom and graduation that we're trying to figure out, and when is that going to happen, and looking at the trends in the health of our state and our county and our area, and where does that look like. And so we've tried to keep those things open and honest, like, hey, here's the dates, this is what we're going to try to do. The first thing we're going to try to do is we're going to try to have prom like it is, we're trying to have graduation like it is, but if that doesn't happen, we've talked to our seniors. We had a Zoom meeting yesterday with them. What do you want? Is August too late after that to have a graduation? All those things. So I think for us, for me at the superintendent level, is just trying to answer questions. And right now, to be honest with you, the biggest question we put out a Google form to our community so our parents and anyone else could chime in. They just want to know when their kids get their stuff back. They're worried about their stuff. The kids are worried about pictures in lockers. I mean, things that have meaning to them. So that's something that we've spent the last 2 or 3 days trying to figure out a plan on how to get all that information out to them and get their stuff back. So, you know, it's taking small steps at a time, but trying to take steps that are meaningful and doing what we say we're going to do when we put information out.
Love the videos. If you have any of your fun videos that you've created, Joe, feel free to share them with us. We had someone sharing some of their videos the other day. So Adam, from a principal perspective, I'd like to hear maybe your kind of focus on how you're communicating with your staff.
So we've had a staff meeting yesterday via Zoom, and we've had weekly contact via Hangouts or Zoom meetings with them, which for me has been nice, and I think for them too, just to be able to see them and you know, have some form of normalcy in a time that's obviously not normal. But even outside, kind of on top of that, we've done you know, we've done some fun things. We did the Scavenger Hunt a couple weeks ago on a Friday morning, where we spent a half hour and looked at, you know, we had to find 30 random objects around our house. So to see everybody kind of on camera running around and your kids running around trying to find these 30 different items, it provided a nice escape. Mrs. Danner and I have started doing daily announcements for our kids and for our community. Just that was a suggestion that came this week. So that's been fun, just for us to kind of be silly and kind of be goofy and get some communication out. I think, kind of to piggyback on what everybody else has said, just trying to answer everything possible in the things we put out. And that's not always easy or always, you know, it's always, there's that availability is not all, it's not always going to be able to be done. But just trying to have clear, concise communication and to try and address everything that may potentially come up, or questions that could potentially come up in communication that's put out. But like I said, for my, you know, communication wise, I think everybody would agree with this. It's just been good for me on a weekly basis to see my staff and to know that everybody's okay, and that, or as okay as we can be. So that's definitely been a good thing. Very important.
Absolutely, for sure. And I'm sure those staff members appreciate it as well, just as much as the students appreciate the opportunities when their, you know, teachers are communicating and engaging with them, even in a virtual face-to-face method. So, and I have full disclosure, love the Scavenger Hunt, and we're actually looking at some ways to incorporate that organizationally. So thanks for modeling some fun. We're going to be doing the same. So Tracy, what about communication for you? Maybe in particular, focus on your communication with your students specifically.
Okay, I'm actually going to do a little both because I think I'm in a unique situation where I talk to my students every day, but then I also am married to another teacher who loves to give me his opinion on how things are going. And then I come to the school every day and talk face-to-face with our administrators. I'm also a parent, and being a parent, I have parent friends at all ages. So I feel like I get a lot of, I don't want to say complaints, I will say concerns. I get a lot of concerns from everybody, and then try to put it out to the right people that it needs to go to so we can get information out there. And so one big thing, I've said this before to Taylor, so, and any students listening, but they don't have a lot of time, like a lot that they're doing right now compared to normal. And so rumors spread really fast. So the students, one student will hear that, you know, I will give you an example that we have canceled graduation and we're not going to do it at all. And then they run with that. And within 2 hours, I have 10 text messages saying, I heard this, my mom heard this. And so to me, it's been about then trying to get that to the people who need to know it right away so that we can get the right information out there. And I think that's just important to remember. Our kids are kids, and you love them, but they're going to take a little tiny piece of information that they have, and by the end of the day, it's going to be here, and people are going to be freaking out. So constant communication is really important. Specifically with my students, the biggest thing that I do is try to make sure they see my face at least once a week, but I like to do a synchronous invitation, and then I like to do an asynchronous video so that they can watch it. So I'm trying to get to, but it is difficult sometimes. So like Taylor's class, when it's mandatory, they're all there. A lot of times a lot of them are in their bed and still like they just woke up just for this call. But then like this morning, I had an optional meeting. I just had open office hours, and Taylor and I ended up playing Would You Rather because we were the only two people in the call. So I do think it's important to understand that video isn't everybody's favorite. And so just making sure I've got some people that I email. I have some, I know this is, again, people may not like this. I gave out my Snapchat and just decided it's not a personal Snapchat anymore. I'm not going to post anything on there that's, I don't want kids to see, but if a kid needs to reach out to me that way, then that's fine. And I've actually had a student who I've had multiple times, and I've struggled to reach, and we probably have the strongest connection we've ever had now because I gave that student my Snapchat. And so when the student has a question, it's immediate feedback, like, hey, can you just look at my paper? I have this question on a citation. I can look at it. That's just the way that the student communicates. So I feel closer to that student now than ever before. So I think the important part is to vary it. And again, these are all good teaching practices that we should have. Know your student and know how they want you to communicate with them, and then do that, even if it means 5 or 6 different means of communication.
I was just going to say a perfect example of modeling differentiation, right? What is it that our students need? And that's a great point, Tracy. Some students don't need that face-to-face. An email is fine, or, a message is fine. But knowing your students, knowing how they want to communicate and what works best for them. And I love the story of the student connecting with you now on a whole nother level that they didn't before. That's incredible. So Taylor, how about from a student perspective? What is that communication piece been like for you?
So the highlights of my days are the only reason I get up are my 10:30 AP Gov Zoom calls. I get on every day. I'm on there. Even over spring break, we had spring break edition, and we were on there at 10:30 every day. We talk about current events. We talk about essay prompts. Basically anything. And so it's only for like 30 minutes-ish. And I wasn't a big video person before, but I really just like the face-to-face contact. Even if it's just for a little bit of time, I feel I get a lot out of it just to talk to other students and talk to my teacher and just kind of get that social interaction that you don't get with the other people that you live with at home. So, and then I have other teachers that are just checking an email with me that, oh, I saw you got this assignment finished. Are you sure you didn't have any troubles? Like that kind of thing. So I do appreciate the checking in. I also appreciate the video calls. Right now I have a lot of good communication with my teachers. So there's really nothing to complain about with that.
I need to add that they do those Zoom calls on Saturdays, even, like, despite me complaining that they're doing them on Saturdays. That's how into them they are.
So, okay, so let's talk about that for just a second though. So Taylor, what is it about those Zoom meetings in particular that is drawing you and the other students to be so enthusiastic about participating?
So usually at the beginning of the week, it's actually Mrs. Johnson's husband that does these calls. So I get to see her a little bit sometimes on these too. But beginning of the week, he'll post a schedule of like what we're doing. So like on Mondays, we'll talk about this issue in the news, and then we'll talk about it related to government. A Tuesday, we might go over an essay prompt for the AP exam. Wednesday, we might do current events. It just kind of depends. And so if you don't want to do certain days, you don't have to do certain days. You can just get on. But we really end up having really good discussions. We really get back to real life, and it feels like class. Even though you're not there, you're not seeing them like in person, it's like you're connecting like you're still in that classroom. and it kind of almost is a little bit of an escape from where you are right now, because it doesn't feel like you're stuck at home. You feel like you're in the classroom, you're getting that experience with other students, and I enjoy it a lot.
That's a good point. I love that you're saying that it's the closest thing you're getting right now to be able to feel like you are actually in class, even though you aren't. So that's phenomenal that you're getting that experience, and love to hear that that's inspiring and motivating for you. And most importantly, you're learning. That's great. All right, we're at about 15 minutes before the end of our session. So I just want to take a quick minute and see if there is anybody that's on with us live right now that has any questions that they want to ask anyone in general. If so, put it in the chat window, or if you're comfortable, you can come off mute and ask your question as well. But I do want to make sure that anybody that's on has an opportunity to ask a question. And just looking through the chat window, Adam, you have at least one fan who does appear to like the Cubs and appreciating the art behind you.
Spent a lot of time on that, so I appreciate that's appreciated.
It does look very well designed, I have to say. All right, so no questions coming in through the chat window. Nobody's come off mute. So what I would like to kind of do right now to finish up is just kind of look at the reflection piece of, you know, where we were a month ago, where we've been, where we're going, all of that. And the planning, the transition piece, Joe, that you mentioned earlier, you know, what is it going to look like when we do get back into school physically? What do you feel you've learned from this, and what advice would you give to our listeners today?
So I think for me, the one thing that we could have done extremely better was try to get more. I mean, we didn't know timelines. We didn't know what was going to happen. We had an idea, but you know, we had some things that we could have put in place earlier. We could have had an e-learning plan in place a little bit quicker than we wanted to. I just think for us, it maybe getting some communication ready so we could send it out immediately instead of having to send something out just to tell them where we're at, and that we'll get more information to them. You know, the first time that, you know, March 13th, and when we got the announcement that the day was that he was going to put us out of school, I think we were here, the group, admin group, Tracy, and I think we were here until 10 or 10:30, 11 o'clock that night trying to get all our ducks in a row, and we decided that we would take the next day off, and basically what that ended up looking like was all of us back in my office the next morning because we couldn't get it off our mind of where we were at. So, you know, I think some more pre-planning on our part would have been better. I think we've handled things fairly well. It could be better, but I think we've handled things fairly well. But just knowing what could have been coming and how fast. We had started this plan. We had planned it as if he wasn't going to call off school, and that we were going to have to make that decision ourselves. So with that being said, we were making the decision to do the remote learning, and that we were going to have to get that plan in place and move immediately. Then he came in and he said, no, they're Act of God days. So we had a full-blown e-learning plan, just all go, no quit. And then it came to the Act of God, and we're like, whoa, this isn't what we want to give our kids and our parents right now. And I think from that, we just scaled everything, steps things down step by step to get to what we thought was a good place for our kids to learn. Like I said, we're only giving them, in our minds, we only want them to have about 2 hours, if that, work a day as we go through. Some classes we give a little more, some classes less. It all kind of balances out, but we're still continuing to look at our data that we're getting to make decisions as we go forward, because we still have a ways to go with this. And like you said, the transition in the next year, one of the biggest conversations that we're having right now, do you collect Chromebooks? Because we may be using them at the beginning of next year. So, but we got that all set up and we're trying to get through that. We're watching things. I mean, I have a feeling that the governor's going to put us out for another 30 days, shelter in place. So, you know, how are we going to continue food service and all of these things going into the summer? I mean, these are all the things we're talking about. How do we get those things? How do we get things back from kids? And so I guess what I would say the biggest thing has been for me has been a group of trusting people that I've been able to work with, and we've been able to throw things off of each other to get a plan in place, and in the end try not to take things personally as we go about it and not kill each other, to be honest.
Absolutely, right? It's like your extended family, you know, like we feel pretty successful in our own home if, you know, we've gotten along this far and no one's killed one another. And it's the same as your extended family, you know, it's making these plans and you are spending a lot of time together and making some major decisions, you know, so kudos to you. And I think you have done a good job, Joe, of surrounding yourself with great people and people you trust. And that makes a huge difference. Adam, how about you?
I think, you know, if you know anything about me, relationships is pretty much the first thing I'll say anything about. And they're intentional in general, even if we're here in person. But one thing I've learned is just how much more intentional you have to be now that we're not here in person. You really have to you're going to make the effort anyways, but you've really got to make the effort and kind of go even further than you would have if we're in the building. You know, it's kind of, I don't want to say unavoidable, but we cross paths all the time when we walk down the hall. But when we're not in the hall, there's got to be some intentionality to make that contact and to reach out to your students, reach out to your staff members, reach whoever the case may be. So, you know, like I said, I'm all about relationships, and that's kind of that's kind of the foundation of what I do. But just seeing how much more intentional you have to be with that right now has just been, I mean, it's kind of been eye-opening, to be real honest with you.
That's a great point, Adam. And I was thinking about that, you know, the other day of, oh my gosh, like who have I not talked to in a while, and who do I need to reach out to? Because even though we are shelter in place and you know, we're here, sometimes the days go by so quickly. You can't believe it's 8 o'clock at night already. So I love that, the be intentional part, and what an impact that will make when you come back, you know, and are again face to face and walking the halls. Tracy.
So I'm just I want to start from where I started to where I am now, because I think that there are a lot of people who have probably felt similar, and I want you to know you're not alone. Amber and I were talking on the phone earlier today, actually, that this is like a grieving process a little bit. So I started out, like Joe said, we had this like really good plan and I was really into it. And then we got the Act of God days and I was kind of upset. And then I went home and I experienced the first couple of days and I just thought to myself, there's no way we could be having kids learn right now. Like, this is a mess. I'm scared. They're scared. No one knows what's going on. And so I wanted to back way down and do nothing. And then as time progresses, I'm finding myself a little more able to take things on. And in doing so, I'm starting to raise my expectations for my students as we go. So my opinion 2 weeks ago was very much social emotional learning. That's all. You shouldn't be expecting things of them. But I'm starting to change as I go, because I'm realizing there are some things that I do want them to know. And I do feel like they need to be doing some work. And so my expectations of the level of work have gone up. And I think that was just part of my grieving process. But what we have to remember is that everyone grieves in a different way and in different time schedules. And so while I'm ready and I think it's time to learn a little bit more, my students may not be there yet. And so I've been trying to keep that in mind as I make higher expectations for my kids, that some of them may be in a place where they're not there. Their home life is terrible. They are taking care of 3 siblings and they don't have time. I got a message from someone the other day. She was watching her brother and she sent me a video and said, I can get on the chat, but this is what I'm dealing with. And he was having a tantrum. So I think that we just have to acknowledge that in each other, that we're all going through something, and we may be ready to tackle stuff at different times.
Absolutely. And again, Tracy, you just, whether it's intentional or not, the message that you continue to send, is that differentiation. Know your students, know your staff, be able to find out where they are, and meet them where they're at. Essentially that's the message that I keep hearing from you. So true. So very true. Taylor, how about you? What do you feel that you've learned through this process? And not necessarily what you've learned academically, just what have you learned as a 18-year-old student finishing up high school, going to college?
So I really understood how much the teachers and the staff are going to are there for our students, especially me. We got off, we knew we weren't going to come back to school, and I really appreciate the teachers not on work right as we were just starting this whole quarantine, knowing that everyone was dealing with the idea that we're not going to have sports, we're not going to go back to school, and then just kind of being understanding through the whole process, knowing that when those announcements come out, that school's done, and knowing that the seniors aren't going to come back, dealing with that and knowing that we're going through that, and knowing that sometimes that's going to get in the way of our work is really important. And I really see that the teachers do care, and that it's not all about the work, it's also about making sure you're okay while doing the work. And so I really appreciate everybody through this and understanding what the kids are also going through.
I love hearing that. And that I think, Taylor, is one of the areas that I really hope that we continue to do. I know educators are very caring people in general, but sometimes the daily grind of work gets in the way of us remembering how important that is for students, and that being there for the students is the one thing that they probably love the most and appreciate the most. So I think that that's a great reminder of something that is important now, but is as important in a normal classroom situation, as it is in this situation as well. So Taylor, if you could kind of give a piece of advice to educators right now in what would make a difference for you, again, as a senior especially, what would that be?
I would honestly say that just check on your student. If you notice that they're not doing the work and you see that they're not turning in their stuff and you're not getting that contact, you should think of why they're not doing it instead of reacting to the fact that they're not doing it. Because I know when they gave the all call, school's done, you're not going back, I was then what's the point of doing this work? And there's a lot of kids that are feeling like that right now too. What's the point of doing the work if I don't get to go and do all the fun things that come along with the schoolwork? So I think making sure that your students are okay while also doing this is a really big part of it, is because that mental health, they're not in school, they're not in that stable environment they're used to learning in. So just making sure that they are learning and they're soaking in what they can with what they're going through.
Absolutely. Well said, kiddo. Well said. You are inspiring and motivating to us all, for sure. And Libby has put a message in on Facebook that it's great to know that ROVA and IDEA continue to empower, inspire, and put students first. You guys are the best. Proud to be from the Rova Strong community. And so I think right there is kind of how I would like to finish it as well, in regards to the incredible work that so many educators are doing. And I so appreciate the time that you're all given today, because I do think that you're modeling putting students first. And Taylor, I hope that you are feeling that, not only from your Rova community, but from others as well. We are all thinking about you. And you all are the reason we do what we do. So thank you, Taylor, for being here today. It means more than you can imagine. And Joe, Adam, and Tracy, as always, your time and support of our organization and giving of your time in a very busy, crazy, chaotic schedule that you have is greatly, greatly appreciated. So thank you for sharing your thoughts and your insight, and your passion as educators as well. It means a lot. For those of you that have joined us, Whitney did put the link into the chat window for the professional development hour for the day. So please feel free to copy. I don't know whether you know or not, but Zoom's kind of taken away the URL links. So you do have to copy and paste what Whitney put into the chat window to get the professional development hour for the day. But please do fill that out. And again, if you have any questions or you need anything from us, or we can help with support or resources, please don't hesitate to reach out to us at any time. We are here for you. And again, Joe, Adam, Tracy, Taylor, thank you. Good luck with the rest of your remote learning processes, and always Rova Strong. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.